Hello to all of the members of the WPU campus community, students, faculty, staff, parents, family members, alumni, and friends of the university. I'm Bobbie Denise Cole, Assistant Vice President of Student Life and Director of Residence Life and Housing. I have the pleasure of sitting down today and having a conversation with our president, Dr. Brian Ralph, to learn more about how WPU is preparing to welcome our Pacers back to campus for the fall semester. Dr. Ralph, how are you doing today?
I am doing pretty well, Bobbie. Thanks for this opportunity. Looking forward to our conversation today.
So Dr. Ralph, I'd like to jump right in with one of the most anticipated questions right now. What can we expect when we come to campus this fall?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is realize that this fall obviously is going to be very different, but I believe that it has the potential to be also very special and very memorable. And of course, a lot of that is going to reside with each of us as community members. I know that many of our students are very excited to be coming to campus. Of course, we've got a wonderful new class of Pacers who are coming here straight from high school or transferring from other institutions. And then all of our returning Pacers who haven't been on campus, most of them since March. So I'm excited to have people back and to bring the vitality and energy that our Pacers bring to campus. But I do expect it's going to feel a little different, perhaps even weird at times. And I know many of us have experienced that when we wore our face covering into a grocery store for the first time or things like that. And of course, we're all going to have those firsts as we arrive here on campus. So a lot of the world has changed around us and is going to require us to continue to change. But the good news is that there are a couple of things that haven't changed, and that is who William Peace University is and the DNA that makes this university community so special. So we have an amazing faculty that have been working really diligently all summer long to be prepared for our classes this fall. And so they're really focused on how we're going to provide the best high quality in-person learning experience that we can, given all of the changes that we've had to make. And then of course, our staff have been working equally hard, getting ready for all the changes that they have to make in supporting our students and challenging our students to make sure that all of our Pacers have the best experience possible here this fall. And then the other thing that I think is really important, of course, we believe in an in-person experience. That's why we're pursuing that this fall with all the health and safety measures in place, because we believe that the campus experience is special. Having a sense of place is critically important. And of course, we have a great community here that is going to help foster that, even though things will definitely be a little bit different this fall. And I think in particular, I think students and faculty and staff will find that as we are coming back to campus and being on campus together, that if we all work hard, especially with all the safety and health measures that we've put in place, that we can really have a terrific fall together.
Thanks, Dr. Ralph. So can you share with me, what are some of those health and safety measures that will be put into place?
Sure. Well, we've put dozens of different steps into action really since the pandemic started in March. And so let's talk a little bit about some of our facilities first. We've got signage that is going to be all over campus, and that ranges from physical distancing sign to how many people can be in a room at any one time, and some of the directional signs that are going to be in place to help guide people to navigate through the campus, and in particular through our classroom buildings. We're, for example, going to have our buildings have a single point of entry and exit to help reduce density. We've added over 100 hand sanitizers throughout campus. They've been installed on walls all over the place. I don't know that you can walk more than 20 feet without hitting another hand sanitizer, which is really, really important because we know that basic sanitizing principles around washing our hands and regularly sanitizing our hands is one of the key measures to help prevent the spread of the coronavirus. So I think that all those types of things are going to be really, really helpful from a facility standpoint. And of course, our facilities team is also going to have a lot of additional cleaning and sanitizing practices in place as all of our faculty, staff, and students come back this fall. Now, classrooms, of course, is going to be a different experience for our students and faculty as well. Almost all of our classes are still going to be in person, but we have several other types of options that we're going to have in place. One is called High Flex, and students can read about this on our new microsite that I'll talk about a little bit later. But High Flex is still going to be meeting in person, but in smaller groups and maybe not necessarily at the same time each week. We're going to have some hybrid and virtual options where students can be in a class or remote, and so could the faculty member. And then we do have some online classes that are available for our students as well. And of course, most of our school professional studies students take all of their classes online. We have invested in a lot of new technologies that are going to allow for some really creative classroom interactions, both virtually and in person. All of our classrooms have been evaluated for physical distancing. So one of the great benefits of William Peace University is that we have small classes to begin with. It's one of the hallmarks of our educational experience. But we did go into a couple classrooms and found that we might need to move a couple of our smaller classes into larger spaces to make sure that there are 6 feet between each student and the faculty member, to, again, just as a preventative measure to make sure that we do everything we can to minimize the spread of the coronavirus. Some of the academic areas are also going to, as I mentioned earlier, have directional signs. That's probably going to take a little bit of getting used to for our returning Pacers who are used to moving back and forth between Flo and Presley and some of the other classroom buildings. So that'll take a little bit of getting used to, but following those directional signs are going to be in the best interest of the entire community. We're going to have cleaning supplies in each of the classrooms to help facilitate additional cleaning beyond even what our facilities team will do. So students can help with that as just an extra measure to make sure that we're doing everything we can. We have upgraded air quality in our 2 major classroom buildings, Flo and Presley, and we have a new technology that's been installed there that kills viruses in the air when it's being circulated through. And one of the key drivers that we know from a lot of the research is that the more the air circulates, the healthier the air is. And so we're now going to be circulating air 6 times an hour in each of those classroom buildings, again, as a preventative measure to make sure that our faculty and students in particular, as they're meeting in classrooms, are as safe as possible. And then lastly, we did upgrade some ventilation systems in Davidson and Ross bathrooms, which will allow for better air quality in those areas. In particular, since some of those students will be obviously sharing a bathroom space, that'll be an additional measure we think will be really helpful to the health and safety of our students.
Thank you. So earlier when you were talking, you used the word community. And as you continue to talk, you use the word we quite a bit. Can you share, it seems that everyone will have a responsibility to keep our campus safe. So can you share what behavioral changes do you foresee for students, staff, and faculty?
That is an excellent question, and I'll cut straight to the chase. We're going to expect a lot of changes in behavior this fall. And the reason is because we all want to be here. And we know that if we take the steps necessary to be selfless and to change our behaviors in the short run, that is going to provide as safe and healthy environment as possible for everybody so that we can all be here and finish the semester here and have a great in-person learning experience and residential experience for a lot of our students. So one thing I think to be mindful of right out of the gate is that the health standards we've put in place are required. They're required for me, they're required for faculty or staff, and for students. We are all in this together as a community. You don't have to click very far on the internet to see where when these guidelines are not followed, that there are substantial issues. But when these guidelines are followed, it really, really improves the likelihood of very minimized spread. And so we have all these plans in place to make sure that we do everything we can for everybody to stay as safe and healthy as possible. So what does that mean? Well, first and foremost, we're asking everybody wear face coverings inside all buildings. And we know that the research clearly shows that face coverings dramatically reduces the amount of spread, especially since almost all cases are directed from in-person or close contact with somebody who is ill. And so face coverings make a huge difference for that. And we have a couple exceptions to that. There are not a lot, but there are a couple exceptions. So for one, you and I are both in our offices right now by ourselves. So we do not have to wear a face covering when we are in our offices by ourselves, and same with a faculty member or other staff member on campus. For students, those of you who are going to be living on campus, and we're excited to have a great residential community this fall. When you are in your residence hall room, you do not need to be wearing a face covering, although you are welcome to do so. And we know that students and faculty and staff that get comfortable wearing face coverings just will make it more natural as we go throughout the semester. And of course, while eating in the dining hall, we have not figured out how to eat through a mask yet, so you certainly don't need to be wearing a face covering while you're eating. And you will see in the dining hall that we've put a lot of additional measures in place to make sure that we keep that environment as safe and healthy as possible. And then, of course, our student athletes who are competing, practicing, and training, you will not need to be wearing face coverings during those events, although you will be assured that our athletic staff and coaches will have a lot of safety measures in place to make sure that you are staying safe and healthy as possible. We're going to be expecting everybody to stay 6 feet apart as much as possible, whether you're wearing a face covering or not. Now, of course, when you go outside, face coverings are not required if you're monitoring that physical distancing, but you're welcome to wear your face mask outside if you'd like to do so. We're going to expect people to practice really strong hygiene. And of course, you all are probably sick of hearing of the 3 major things, but wearing a face covering, washing and sanitizing your hands, and then obviously the physical distancing are the 3 major drivers to minimize spread. And so we're going to ask everybody to participate in that. And if one of you sees me walking around campus and I'm not observing physical distancing, you can call me out on it. I promise you, I'll take that with all the good-natured ribbing that I deserve, because we all need to abide by this. We are going to be asking employees and students to take their temperature daily. And again, this is a preventative measure. We know that taking a temperature is not a foolproof way to minimize spread, but it absolutely helps. And so students will be using Magnus Health. For our traditional undergraduates, our school professional studies students, and the employees will be using a separate recording mechanism to make sure that we're tracking our temperature. Again, all in the effort to make sure that our community stays as safe and healthy as possible. There are a number of other items and policies that are put in place to minimize the spread, and students are going to be required to review all of our safety and health protocols prior to coming here, and you're going to have to sign off on all of those. You're going to receive a set of those guidelines from the Division of Student Life, and so you can make sure you review all those, sign off on those, especially if you have questions about them. But they include things around the Wellness Center, they include things around residential life and housing, and then also just activities and gatherings and things like that. So it's important for everybody to understand what those guidelines are. I think going in, and you opened with this question, Bobbie, and I think it's important maybe to even revisit it now. Things are going to be different, but if we all participate and take the responsibility for ourselves and be selfless and inconvenienced for a little while, I think that we can still have a successful semester. And students, you're going to see what's called the PACER Pledge, and that's going to be important that you review that and understand what's coming as part of that, because by making that PACER Pledge, you're telling us as a community that you're ready to do what needs to be done in order for us to have a successful fall semester.
Thanks, Dr. Rao.
Sure.
So you said things are going to be different, and you've mentioned that a few times. Yep. So can you elaborate just a little bit more on specific support services like advising and tutoring and counseling, and how will those look this semester?
Sure, absolutely. And as we talked earlier, hopefully I've framed out what the classroom experience will look like, but certainly the support services are critically important to the success of our students here at the university. We have them here. It's one of the great things about a small university is that we can provide outstanding support and opportunities for students in a variety of ways. So for those of you that need, let's say, academic support through the Center for Student Success, you'll be able to do it in person or virtually. And those of you that maybe are peer tutors, you'll be able to perform those services virtually or in person. And our Center for Student Success is prepared to set all that up. The Career Design Center and the registrar will provide services both virtually or by phone, and you can make appointments through WPU Connect. And those of you who are new students, you're going to get to love WPU Connect as you get started here. So make sure you get acquainted with that because it is a great resource and portal for you to get all the support and questions answered that you may have. Also, our counseling center is going to be available for telehealth therapy and virtual group therapy. We're going to have in-person counseling available on a case-by-case basis, but we're really going to, again, try to minimize that as much as possible, but it certainly is going to be available where needed. And I think all of these support services are going to be really critical as we do look at a semester that's very different. Some of you may experience some things that you've not experienced before because you're going to class wearing a face covering for the first time, and you may want to talk to somebody about that. Others of you may be really excited about doing virtual tutoring for the first time, and so I'd encourage you to connect with the tutoring center so you can take advantage of those kinds of opportunities. So I think those are some of the things that we're going to see, and I also think that we're going to be surprised. We're going to see some other things that once we're all here together, like, oh wow, this is very different than what I expected, and that's just going to be part of it. And but I'm confident we've got a very supportive and flexible community here that we'll all figure it out.
So what about residence life and on-campus dining? How will those operate this fall?
Yeah, so obviously, again, very different, although I think there's going to be more similarities than maybe people are expecting. So one of the big differences is that, and again, in order to make sure that we did everything we could to reduce density, over half of our beds this year are designated as single rooms, and that's much, much higher than we've ever had in the past. We know that many of you wanted those, but we also know many of you wanted some roommates. And of course, we're going to work hard to make sure that those of you that do have roommates, use the same good health and safety practices that those who are in single rooms, because at any given time, we all need to be doing our part. And so we're going to have students spread out over 2 major residential locations, and that's not different than in the past. Of course, Village Green and then main campus. And almost, well, actually every student in Village Green has their own room and their own bathroom. So that'll really help with some of the density issues. Many of our residential students are not going to be sharing a bathroom at all, or will only be sharing with a very small group of people, in many cases only one other student. That's a bit different than what our returning students have experienced in the past. And I think that's going to be helpful. I think it'll help minimize spread. It'll help students to make sure that they're caring for themselves, but also for one another, to make it easier to do that. I have had a lot of people talk to me about, well, gosh, some of these bigger universities are reducing their residency rates and things like that. And we've done that largely through the expansion of our single rooms. But one thing I think is really, really important to remember is that we're going to have around 400 residential students spread out between 2 different residential environments. Most of these larger places have 400 students in a single building. We're spread out over, I think 7 buildings now. So we really have, I think, a really good plan. The density is really low. Students are spread out. Many are in single rooms. And as long as we do our part and, behave well, I think that we're going to be in store for a very good residential experience. Couple things that are going to be different is the guest policy is going to be very different than what students are used to in the past. One of the things that we want to do first and foremost is protect our community. And one of the best ways to do that is make sure that our community is staying together and that we're minimizing the impact of outside people on our community. And so guests are not going to be allowed in residence halls. You're welcome to have guests on campus as long as you observe physical distancing, but they won't be allowed in the residence halls unless they're a member of the WPU community. So those of you that maybe have friends at State or Meredith or other places, they're welcome to come visit you on campus as long as they follow all of our guidelines, but they can't come in the residence halls. And again, that is to protect everybody else in the residence hall as much as it is to protect you and our guests. And then I think the other thing that's really important to remember is that we have a terrific partner with Sodexo, our dining service provider. And so they have put together a ton of new strategies and practices that are going to be in place for this fall to really help the dining experience to feel as natural and safe as possible. And I know many of you are already eating in restaurants, and so you're used to eating out in the midst of the pandemic, which is great, but we're gonna have new things such as touchless entry options. We're gonna have obviously new enhanced sanitation practices. There are going to be plexiglass barriers in key areas to make sure, again, we minimize any potential spread. New protocols, there's going to be more to go and carry out options than we've had in the past. And I think all of those things working together are going to create for as good a dining experience for our students as possible. Then, of course, we have our other dining areas on campus, whether it's Peace Perk and things like that. We're still looking at the best way to make sure that those deliver the best service possible, but also in the safest way possible.
So Dr. Ralph, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about athletics. Will there be athletic competitions, club sports, or intramurals on campus this fall?
Sure. So actually just this week, the USA South, which is the athletic conference in which we compete, made the tough but I think very smart decision to postpone all of our fall sports to the spring semester. So there's still a plan to compete in the spring. So in some ways, it's kind of like flipping the spring and the fall for our fall student athletes. And so they'll be practicing and training this fall and then competing in the spring, of course, assuming everything goes well. We certainly are going to still look at intramurals and how we can do that safely and effectively, because we absolutely understand and believe that intramurals is an important part from a health standpoint, but also just from a community standpoint and a competition standpoint. So we will have some select intramurals, and we'll probably have some new types of intramural activities that maybe we haven't had in the past that we can take advantage of and try because of the pandemic. And I think students will be excited to see some of the creativity that's going to come out in some of those areas.
So will we have any student activities on campus at all?
Absolutely, absolutely. We are coming back to campus as a residential campus community because we believe in the power of the entire experience, and that includes student activities and all the different types of opportunities for involvement that our students will have. They will definitely look different in some cases. Of course, our returning Pacers know we've got some hallmark traditions here that are often usually really, really big student events, and we're not going to be able to do those in the way that we've done those in the past. But I have confidence that our student involvement team is going to come up with a lot of creative ways for students to engage. And then we're going to have some new activities that will definitely be in smaller groups so that we can keep those safe and protect the health and safety of everyone. But I think the key thing to remember is that no matter what we do, it's going to be designed to have fun, to learn, to build community, but all do it in a safe and healthy manner.
So is there a chance we will convert to all online?
That question is being asked all across the country on every college campus. So I think it hinges really on a couple things. And the first thing, and I don't know that I can say this strongly enough, it's going to depend on us as a community. If we do everything in our power to minimize the spread, I think that we can avoid having to pivot to go to online, at least as much as we can control. So what does that mean? Well, does that mean that everybody in our community is wearing face coverings like we've asked? Does that mean that everybody's regularly washing their hands and using hand sanitizer and physical distancing? Are we holding each other accountable? And I know, students, that that is not an easy thing to do sometimes, but that is one of the best ways to give everybody ownership in the health of our community, and it is by holding each other accountable if people are not observing some of these things. And a little one, but a big one. If you're not feeling well, don't go to class, contact the Health and Wellness Center, or obviously employees are going to contact, they're going to stay home, they're going to contact Human Resources, and then we'll get testing going, and hopefully it won't be COVID, but simple things like that are going to make a huge impact on whether or not we have to move to online instruction. Now, that's what we can control. Now, the other thing we can't control, but we're going to continue to monitor, is what's happening around us. So what's happening in Wake County and in Raleigh and in North Carolina. Of course, if there is another big spike and the virus spreads dramatically, we're going to have to evaluate that and its potential impact on our campus. But we believe that everything we've put in place should really help minimize the spread of the virus on campus and allow us to have a successful in-person experience. We are ready if we have to go to online. We absolutely are ready to do that. We just really hope we don't. And that's why we've put so much effort into planning for an in-person experience this fall.
So Dr. Ralph, thank you for your transparency today. I have really enjoyed our conversation. My final question for you, what else would you like to say to our Pacers?
Well, first of all, we're excited to welcome you back to campus, and to our new Pacers, welcome to the best decision you've made yet. At least I'm biased about that, but I absolutely believe that you're going to be thrilled with choosing William Peace University. This is going to be a different fall, and I know that none of you signed up for this. We didn't sign up for it either. But the good news is that I believe that we are a campus community that can do this and do this well. And I think it's going to require, as I mentioned earlier, a couple things. First and foremost, that we're all in on this, that we pledge as Pacers to do everything we can as community members to minimize the spread. And that includes all the health and safety standards that I've talked about before. But I also think it is going to reside in our attitudes as well. How are we going to lean forward and be positive and embrace this experience and this challenge in ways that are going to be different, but also potentially impactful on our own personal journeys through a very odd season. And so I want to challenge all of our community members, our faculty, our staff, and our students. Let's go into this fall with hope and expectation that we can do this and that we can do this well. And we'll eventually get used to wearing face coverings. We'll eventually get used to the distancing on campus. But what I hope that we won't get used to is some of the awkwardness that may happen early on when we're trying to build community. We want to be a place where we're committed to building community, and we're going to have to learn new ways to do that, physically distanced in some cases. But I hope that we're going to continuously work on making the very, very best of the situation. And I think if we do that, we're going to look back in December, we're going to look back on the semester and think, wow, that was a very odd experience, but one that was rewarding and exciting and had some really neat moments, and we did it. And And I think that we can do that if we come together as a community. So I'm very hopeful and excited about what we're going to be able to do this fall, and know that our Pacers are going to step up and do everything they can to be committed to our community. And I think if we all do that together, this is going to really end up being a really good fall.
Thank you, Dr. Rao.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this update on our plans and preparations for the fall semester. I encourage you to stay up to date on the university's plans by visiting covid.peace.edu. We are looking forward to seeing all of our Pacers this fall on campus soon.